Good morning. Welcome to the last talk before lunch here in Mandarin B. We have with us Cam Beaudoin to speak with us on disability inclusion and accessibility. So let's go ahead and welcome Cam, please.
Hey, thanks so much. There's always that one speaker slot before lunch, you know, when everyone's just chomping at the bit, ready to go, and that's the slot I got. My kid came to me the other day and said, "Dad, what color is my baby brother's swaddle?" And I said, "Oh, I know this one, okay? That is camo green." And he starts laughing. I said, "Okay, I know this joke too." See, I've even brought it with me because props are always a good thing to bring for a talk. Can someone help me out? What color is this swaddle here? Brown. Thanks. See, I know who's in the audience. See, I'm colorblind. See, no matter how hard I try, I'm never going to be able to see this as brown. But with, let's say 20 people in here, I know, without a shadow of a doubt, there's a man in here as well who is also colorblind. 1 in 14 men are colorblind. And 99% of the time, you know, this doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I can't pick bananas properly. They're always too green or overripe or stuff like that. It's not a big deal. But then there's certain scenarios that come up, and recently I was at the hospital. My younger kid needed to get checked for some medical reasons. And while my wife was holding down a screaming baby and the doctor was trying to poke and prod him for something, an alarm starts blaring on the machine that's next to me. And the doctor turns and says, "Can you press the green button over there?" And I'm like, I don't know what button's the green button. But of course, I'm rarely at the hospital. But I do need to check myself every once in a while because this is called an invisible disability. I'm not excluded from society, much more than say, you know, on websites, when a website's built and there's no underline under the text. I don't know there's a link. It's so frustrating. It's like, why? Like, you know, so you have like a dark red link and then the rest of the text is black. It just doesn't make any sense. Those are the only times that really I feel excluded from society. I can't be an electrician. I can't be a pilot. I could be a dev just fine. So there's no problem there. But just don't get me to pick your color palette, you know, as the full stack developer, right? There's one part that we don't think of in the world right now. And see, the thing is, we don't consider people with disabilities in many things that we do. We forget that it's just part of society. We forget that they're there. And especially for people like me who have an invisible disability, what other kind of disabilities could there be out there? We have people with PTSD, people who have anxiety, people who have autism, people who have dyslexia, dysmorphia. These all different disabilities which just happen in society and we don't even know about it. And this is, of course, opposed to the visible disabilities, which we quantify as blindness, someone who has a cane, very obvious, very visible, someone who's in a wheelchair, somebody who is deaf, has a hearing aid. Very easy to spot people like that. And yet, our environments, our code, our workplaces, they're not really built for people with disabilities. They're not really built for people who've been forgotten by society either. And so the WHO, the World Health Organization, categorizes disabilities as more than just the physical representation of not being able to do something. It also includes in there, and I quote here, the features of the society in which they live. And this tells us that if we're participating in society, if we are helping build technology or build workplaces or build environments for the world, then we're also contributing to disabling people who are not part of, who have disabilities. And that's something to think about as well. Because I don't want to prevent anyone from accessing society. I don't want to stop anyone from gaining access to the tools that I'm building or the workplaces that I'm participating in as well. So today, I want to shine a light on some of our own internal biases. I want to make us aware of kind of what we think about with disabilities and maybe even challenge some of those beliefs that we currently have. Because I'm going to say that one day, every single person in this room will one day need accessibility features. We will all participate as part of this group of individuals who have accessibility requirements. So, I got a question for you. Okay, show of hands. Who here uses a streaming service? Okay, this is going to be a pretty easy. Okay, people who didn't raise, are you using cable TV or something like that? Like, I mean, it's... Oh, okay, CDs, okay. Now another question. Who uses their streaming service with the captions turned on? Captions turned on. Yeah. Why do you use captions?
My daughter does.
Your daughter does? Yeah. Why does she have hearing
She
impairment?
does 50 things at once and rather read it than edit.
See?
Not
See?
because
Yeah.
she
Now,
doesn't pay attention to the show. She'll read it and then do something else.
yeah. Yeah. Anyone else use captions? Why do you use captions?
It's easier to
Just easy.
understand what people say.
Totally. Yeah.
I actually hate captions white on black. I love them black and white. Otherwise, I can't do anything but read.
Right. Right. Right.
That's why I struggle. But I have to turn them on for the occasional word that makes no sense.
You try watching Peaky Blinders? Yeah, forget that. Like, I can't understand a word those guys are saying. My wife is ESL, right? She needs to watch with The Witcher with captions because otherwise she doesn't understand what's going on. But these are features that weren't designed for people able-bodied like us. This was designed and built for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And yet we benefit from the features and the accommodations that have been provided to us. Maybe here's a funny story. The reason that we have captions from Netflix is actually in 2010, the National Association of the Deaf, they sued Netflix and said there's not enough captions on your streaming service. This is not equitable. So Netflix settled out of court to the tune of $750,000, not a small amount. And they said, yes, by 2014, all of our new content that we publish will have captions. And by 2016, all the old content, everything that's already been produced and on our platform will have captions as well. And the benefit to that, we all get captions. And there's something that's really interesting when you read captions as well. It's called multimodal learning. You actually contain and retain more information. And so that's really beneficial for children who are learning to read and write. It's beneficial for, like I said, my wife, someone like that, who is English as a second language, but also people with learning disabilities, or, of course, people who are deaf. Multimodal learning is when you can take different aspects of how to learn. So you're learning visually, you're learning audibly, and you're reading the text as well. And like I said, this statistically shows that there's better retention when you learn something. And this is the wonderful news about accessible technology. We sometimes forget that it's even there because it's so common. Imagine it was the year 1400 and you were a scribe writing down religious texts before the spectacles. You would be out of a job. I'm not sure. Did they have jobs back then, or were they just ordered as part of the, were you a monk or something like that? But you were no longer able to do the thing that you were supposed to do if you didn't have spectacles. Now it's obvious. That's an accommodation that we've forgotten about. What about if you're traveling and you've got a wheelie bag and you've got a ramp that comes up on the sidewalk? It's really easy, right? That wasn't designed for people who are able-bodied with strollers or wheelies. That was designed for people in wheelchairs back in 1968. That was mandatory at that point. What about buttons to open doors? Again, it wasn't designed for us with 2 cups of Tim Hortons coffee trying to elbow those buttons to open the door. It was designed for people, again, with mobility issues to allow access into buildings. So when you think about stuff like this, these are other accommodations, other affordances that we benefit from as able-bodied people, but they weren't designed for us. They were designed for people for accessibility reasons. Lucky us, lucky us. So that's why I say, I enjoy thinking about this because I want to think about participating in my own future. As I said earlier on, we will all be requiring these as we get older. Every single day that goes by, we get a little bit older. Maybe need a bit stronger glasses. Maybe one day we'll even need that wheelchair to be able to participate in society. Why not build for our own future? Because I don't want to exclude myself from the products and technology and the services that I currently use in the future as well. Now, I want us to think of, before even this talk, what image came to mind when I said disability? What did you thinking of? I don't know, on TikTok, there's all these videos of kids who are building prosthetic arms and stuff like that out of Lego. Super cool. If you want to see some really cool videos of kids being ingenious, they're building shit out of Lego prosthetics limbs and it's free. Or 3D printing prosthetics limbs, super, super cool. When you talk about access to technology and access to information, you can now download your prosthetic arm using a 3D printer, and you've got something that used to cost thousands of dollars. So access. Or are you thinking of the Paralympics? If you've ever watched a wheelchair tennis player, holy crap, they are running. They are wheeling across the court in a way that I can't believe how fast they're moving. Or you may be thinking of a family member who has a disability. Maybe thinking of yourself. And those are deeper thoughts. Those are powerful thoughts. Because those are things that we don't think of all the time. And yet, when it comes up front, when we start to think about it, we're saying, I don't want to exclude my cousin who has a hard time reading. See, I started my career off like many of the people. I didn't start as an accessibility advocate. I was a full stack developer, hired at IBM. Don't hold that against me. Hired at IBM to go and fix a front-end web project for TD Bank up here in Canada. And I was told to go and fix our backlog. We've got 3,000 accessibility issues. Okay, fine. What the heck is accessibility? So I did my best. I read and I fixed them. I burned down those defects. But I'd never actually met somebody with a disability, somebody who actually needed to use it front end. So there's this guy, and he was a traveling accessibility professional. He would go around all the different IBM offices, and he would teach people about accessibility. And when he came to our office, it's important to know that his name is Tom, and Tom is blind. And Tom uses a screen reader and has a dog and a cane. And my boss walked up to Tom and went up to him and said, "Hey, Tom, my name is Jim." And you ever had one of those bosses that's like an ex-salesperson, you know, and they walk around the office with like a popped collar, and you're like, dude, you're not like 16 anymore. But he walked up to Tom and stuck his hand in his face and said, "Hey, Tom, my name's Jim." And he was staring him down because Tom had no idea there's a hand outstretched. He's blind. And I died from embarrassment. I ran back to my desk. I typed in YouTube, how to shake a blind person's hand, because I'm like, I don't know how to do it. But then I realized that all you need to do to cue up somebody to shake their hand if they're blind is just say it. "Hey, Tom, my name's Cam. Can I shake your hand?" That little aspect of "can I shake your hand" is enough of a cue to have somebody stick out their hand. Because he's not going to go and stick out his hand for everybody. He's blind. He doesn't know. Sorry? You can shake his hand, yeah. Just don't pet the dog. Don't pet. Grammar. See, my boss didn't know, and I didn't know before I went and researched it, right? Our parents don't talk about disabilities. In fact, usually what happens when a child points at someone in a wheelchair, "Mom, Dad, look at that." And you go, "Shh, shh, shh, don't look, don't point, don't stare. We're telling people to exclude people with disabilities just based on how they look. Schools don't talk about disabilities in textbooks. They don't teach people. In fact, many schools, when a child has some kind of disability, they're just purposely excluded. They can't come on a field trip. They're not participating in this. They're told to slow down and go continue working over there while the rest of the class, who's a little bit faster in their work, continues on ahead. HR departments don't know how to handle disabilities either. They're filled with lists of accommodations, and they don't know how to handle that just because that's the way the world works. We're not talking about it. So how do you bring it up? You just simply ask. You just simply ask somebody. If you know somebody has a vision impairment, if you know someone's deaf, you just say, "Hey, how can I get your attention? You're deaf. Like, how do you want me to get your attention?" Maybe they can read lips. "Do you want me to come shake your chair?" He's, No. Never shake someone's chair who's deaf. That's like an earthquake's happening. Tap them on the shoulder. Good place to start. But just ask. Go with the genuine curiosity that you would want in the same situation. Go with that human interest that will start the conversation. See, people with disabilities have been fighting for millennia with negative attitudes all the way back to forever. As soon as somebody has a disability, we think with that lizard brain of our mind that we're going to catch a disease, we're going to catch whatever they've got, and we don't want to associate anymore. But I want to say that that's not true. It is just a whole bias that we learn throughout our lives, and it's something that we can work on, something we can get better at. So 3 things I want to talk about, ways to be more inclusive for people with disabilities. Very, very easy. So I already covered one. Don't pet the dog. The dog is working. If the dog has his jacket on, don't pet the dog, even though they're so cute. Like, don't get me wrong. If the holding a door open for somebody who's in a wheelchair, or somebody who's using a cane or has a walker, is always going to be well received. And finally, understanding when your colleague is asking for help, when somebody is looking for some time off, needs some help for some invisible disability, some mental health reasons. Just accepting and understanding that that may be a situation that you're in one day and not to prejudge. Let's talk about that for a second. In 2023, Gartner released some of the hottest future of work trends, and it included many things that were beneficial for people with disabilities. Can anyone guess what maybe some of those future of work trends could be that would help? Working from home, big one. Yeah, that's number 1. Hybrid work environments helps people with chronic pain, mobility issues, people with social anxiety, big benefit to that. Anyone else consider another one? Flexible schedules is the other one. Flexible schedules, big hot work trend right now. Helps people with ADHD, sleep disorders, and autism. Helps them fix and work when they work best. Last one again, focus number 3 on mental health benefits, which I think pretty much everyone at some point, like any large organization is going to have some mental health benefits. You can go speak to somebody to help your mind or your body, physical therapy or mental therapy. And you notice a lot of this conversation does revolve around the conversation around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because accessibility fits exactly inside that conversation so well. Right now, there's a big focus on gender and ethnicity, but accessibility translates through all of that. It's the intersection between all races, all genders, all creeds, colors, and orientations. See, conventional wisdom says that people with disabilities are hard to work with, but that's just our society's bias speaking. In fact, tapping into a community like this gains you access to a group of individuals who is hardworking, able to work very innovatively and creatively. Because if you have a disability, you are literally trying to find creative solutions to your everyday life. And you get access to someone like that too. And I want to say to anyone who may have a disability at the moment, to disclose is sometimes a really challenging thing to do. I know many people with disability. In fact, the top post on ADHD, the subreddit, has someone saying, should I disclose to my boss? Should I disclose to my manager? And the answer was vehemently, no, do not disclose. Your boss will let you go. You'll get fired. And that's an unfortunate situation to be in when we can't even be open at work and say, hey boss, can I come in a little bit later today? I'll work a little bit later just to make up for it because I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time working. That's unfortunate. And if you're a boss, if you're trying to think of how to create a sustainable workplace with employees who want to work longer hours and work better, more productive, then maybe considering something like this would really work. Maybe considering updating your hiring practices or your workplace practices to include people with disabilities or include these modern practices like flexible. I don't know any developer who's working on a fixed schedule now anyways, but some places they do. Being able to be flexible like that can only help your own employees. And this means team members who can think outside the box. So in conclusion, I'm not here to dictate, to tell you, like to recruit you to becoming an accessibility professional. That's not the goal here. But I'm here to recruit you because the next time that you hear disability, maybe at work and you're thinking you're building something and someone says, did we check for accessibility? Or did we consider disabilities as part of this release, this feature, or something like that? I want you to think of this conversation. I want you to think of this talk. Maybe there's a different orientation, different thing that we can think of. I'm not here to tell you to revamp your entire technology stack, to rebuild your website, but maybe some tweaks can create a larger customer base. That may be a possibility. And to any leaders or stakeholders or business leads in the room, that would be interesting to understand. You get a wider customer base that only benefits your business. I'm not here to tell you to change your hiring policies or fix your HR, because that's usually outside of our purview. But making some changes, some accommodations, can maybe gain you access to a larger employee pool, get a better workforce, and make happier and more sustainable employees. Finally, like I said, accessibility fits directly inside of a DEI plan, and diversity and inclusion is freaking hard. We're still trying to muddle our way through it. We're still trying to figure out what works for that. But we have a long ways to go. So when you go home, I want you to think about something. I want you to remember that there's people out there who don't think or talk or look or seem or live like you do. Because people with disabilities represent 1 in 5 people in society. So next time your boss says something like, it's okay, we don't have clients with disabilities, you can call bullshit on that, just like that. Because there's lots of people out there who have disabilities. I have a friend who has cerebral palsy. He jokes around, he's still learning to walk because he's in a wheelchair, he's 45. And he's been a scrum leader for so long that he was hired into accessibility only after the fact. He was hired at Microsoft, actually. And Dave has a saying. He says, I may have cerebral palsy, but my money doesn't. And I think that's a really powerful statement. He also says something like, everybody at one point will have a disability, just some of us got here first. So I've got a hat, A11Y. If this stands for accessibility, there's 11 characters between the A and the Y in the word accessibility. But it's also ally. So I want you to consider being an ally for people with disabilities in your workplace, in your environment, in your society that's around. Because in the future, that may be you. I'm really active on LinkedIn for accessibility as well. If anyone wants to give me some feedback or search me up on LinkedIn, happy to connect with anyone here too.